crack on if that's all right. So just to say, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Dr. Daniel Crabtree. I work for Aberdeen City Council as a research fellow in health, and I'm also an honorary research fellow with the Rowett Institute at the University of Aberdeen. This is our 5th Highlands and Islands Sport and Health Science produced webinar. And today's webinar is going to be about building better rugby players, rethinking rugby athlete development. And we're very lucky to be joined by Sam Summers and Rob Anderson. I'm going to let Sam and Rob introduce themselves. I've seen their slides and they have their introductions down. I'd just like to say that Dr. Nidia Rodriguez Sanchez, who's a co-founder of Highlands and Islands Sport and Health Science, can't join us tonight, unfortunately, until the Q&A session. So I'll just be myself. The Q&A session will start immediately after the presentation. It's going to be a joint presentation between Rob and Sam, but do feel free to put your questions in the chat as we go, and I can cycle back to them once it comes to the end of the presentation. As I said, for anyone joining us, there are a couple of housekeeping notes in the chat. If you wouldn't mind having a quick look, please. Just to say, please keep your mics muted throughout, and the presentation is being recorded. So we will record the session all the way through to the end, and then we will edit the recording so that we take out the open Q&A and just leave the presentation in for you to access whenever you like, and that will be sent to everyone who's registered along with the feedback form. Last thing to say is, even though Nidia can't join us, she is recruiting participants for a study at the moment, and I'm going to put the link in the chat for everyone. I hope that's okay. It's a survey study, so if you'd be interested, then please click on the link and contact the relevant individuals if you'd be interested in participating in that study. Thank you. But I'm going to hand over to Rob and Sam now.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Dan, and thanks for everyone tuning in this evening. I appreciate people choosing to take time out of their day to listen to myself and Sam. So hopefully we can give you something worthwhile to take away and stick into your coaching practice, ASAP. So hopefully everyone can see those slides. We're all give us a thumbs up, Sam, if you're happy with those. You can see them.
All good.
Cool. So we're going to jump into the topic of building better rugby players and rethinking rugby athlete development. And obviously that's the kind of spin or the angle that Sam and I have based on our previous experience. But actually what we're going to talk about is pretty much true of just about every sport. It's just the highlight being this evening talking about the sport of rugby. But realistically, these principles transfer to pretty much every sport when it comes to the context of strength and conditioning. So in terms of myself, as to why you should bother to give me 30 or 45 minutes of your time, I'm the founder of the Athlete Academy, but before that I spent 5 years at Scottish Rugby across multiple regions. So I was in the Borders and East Lothian Academy. I then moved to the Caledonia Academy, where I recruited a very young up-and-coming coach who now is sat in my role in Caledonia on the other side. So I got something right in that recruitment. So you can see Sam pushing onto that. I did a bit with the national teams. So I did an under 16, 17s, 18s national teams, usual kind of stuff. Went to university, had my degree, my master's, and was fortunate last year to be awarded the 2024 UK Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year for youth sport. So that's a bit about myself. Over to you, Sam.
A lovely intro to follow up with. Hello, everybody. I am Sam, as Rob has previously introduced. Currently spent 5 years at Scottish Rugby. I think I'm on my 5th year now. As Rob has said, currently the lead S&C coach for the Caledonia Region within this academy, the male academy. Previously to that, started as a contractor, working in Aberdeen, still there, and now trying to hopefully take the region in a little bit of a better direction. 5 years also spent at Scottish FA working with the women's pathway, nationally working with under 16s, under 17s and 19s women. And then prior to that, starting out from university as a graduate sports scientist with Aberdeen Football Club. Also have my own business where train local amateur athletes at Next Level Performance, and got my master's and undergrad at Robert Gordon's University. And that's me. So our objective for this evening is to offer you all hopefully an alternative perspective on what athletic development should look like for specifically tonight youth rugby players, but like Rob said, this really can be transferred to any sport. It's the principles in terms of how we develop young athletes, and hopefully we're able to break down a bit of an old narrative around old school kind of training methods and offer a more holistic approach to making sure that our youth athletes are trained across a much more athletic focus training perspective. Rob, on you go.
So one of the key things to start with, and I think it's often one of the key parts that people get wrong, is acknowledging where you are in the pathway. So I've got here the Scottish Rugby, and this is the male performance pathway diagram. And you can see how this is divided up into minis, youth and schools, the adult game, clubs, schools, etc. But I think it's really important when we're talking about strength and conditioning and we're talking about athlete development, that we identify with really a high level of clarity where we fit in that spectrum. Often I talk to coaches, and from what they're, the methods they're talking about, or the programming, or the tools that they're talking about, you would think that they're working with a national team. And then it turns out they're working with a local youth or school team. And that's because of a misunderstanding of where they are in the pathway. They think they're coaching Glasgow Warriors or Scotland A, but they're actually coaching the under-14s. And as a result, the priorities are kind of back to front. So it's really important to kind of really clearly identify, where are we in this pathway? And this will look different if you're working in the female game or if you're working in cycling or football. But start to identify, okay, what does our pathway look like? And where am I in this spectrum? Am I right at the bottom of it, where it's all about individual development? Or am I right at the end, where it's all about winning at the weekend and getting championships? And that's essentially what this next bit identifies. And this is probably my experience, but I think if you look at the spectrum, we probably all agree that at the early end of the game or the sport, it's really about individual development. It's very rare that your local football team under 10 squad in entirety will make it to the first team. That pretty much never happens. It's individuals that progress on. It's individuals that get selected. It's individuals that move into the regional. So it's actually about individual development within that youth or school or academy end. And as we get to that top end, your Glasgow Warriors, your Edinburgh Rugby, your national team, it's the team development. It's where do you fit in the team? Who's best prepared to do the role we need this weekend against Ireland, for example. So we have this balance that kind of shifts as we age in the sport or age in the game, that it goes from individual skill development and tactical development to the team and how is the team as a cohesive unit. And understanding, again, where we fit in this process. Are we at the end where it's more about individual development, or are we at the end where it's more about performance and how the team is developing as a whole? So that's where it becomes really important to identify what is your mission, because where you are in that spectrum of development, where you are in the pathway, will determine your mission. So if we look at the Scottish Rugby blueprint, this is the under 15. I think this is the male pathway again, but it's looking at what are the key things that we should be focusing on as skilled coaches at the under 15 level. So we've got lots of different things here. We look at offload and lifts and the creative attack, running, kicking or passing into best space, scanning. We're really talking about technical skills. We're talking about catching, passing, kicking, tackling, rucking, offloading, scanning. And I think we'd all agree that if a coach is working at this level and compromising on these things and just deciding, you know what, we're not going to work on passing, or actually we're not going to work on rucking or tackling, that we're compromising the player's ability to progress further in the game. And any player that, is a 9 out of 10 at catching, but a 1 out of 10 at tackling, they're compromised in their ability to progress and the opportunities that will arise. And it's actually absolutely no different from an athletic development perspective. Just like those previous things we mentioned, kicking, catching, passing, tackling, ruckling, are skills. So we have these skills on the left-hand side: squatting, pushing, pulling, jumping, landing, rolling. Notice it's not back squatting, it's not bench pressing, it's not any specific exercise, it's movement patterns, it's skills. Just like those other things I mentioned are rugby skills, these are athletic skills. And just like our rugby skills, if we're missing any of these, we are again compromising the player's ability to progress in the game, because just like their sport-specific toolbox, they need to be able to do all those things. From their athletic development toolbox, they also need to be able to have all these skills. And any of them missing is going to be a disadvantage to them into the next step. So I want to kind of hopefully start to reframe this idea that we're looking and talking about really the same thing, just in two different contexts. So we might look at this girl on the left-hand side doing an RDL and think, well, that's strength and conditioning, that fits in one box. And this player on the right-hand side who's catching, that's skills, that's in a different box. Well, actually, your brain doesn't think like that. Your brain doesn't know you're playing rugby. Your brain doesn't know you're in the gym lifting. all your brain knows is that you're asking it to perform a task, and it's sending nerve impulses to your muscles to contract, to create movement. It doesn't know whether you're catching a rugby ball or you're doing an RDL. It just knows I'm being asked to fulfill this function. That's what we're going to do. So actually, if we start to look at it under this lens and realize that the brain is viewing these things essentially as the same category, it's asking, I'm being asked to move, I'm going to contract these muscles to make it happen. Well, actually, when we look at a player on the pitch, be it tackling, rucking, catching, passing, lifting, whatever it is, we're probably, as a skills coach, looking at these key things. What does this look like technically? Has this player got an early hand catch? Have they got a nice W going on? Have they got a good range of motion when they catch and they pass again? Or are they really in tight and just flicking it on and not getting a lot of power on the pass? What is that accuracy like? Are they hitting the target, or are they too far in front, too far behind? What about the speed of the pass? Is it nice and zippy, or is it really floaty, just asking for an interception? Do we have any unwanted momentum or unwanted movement? Thinking like a scrum half, picking up from the back of the scrum. If he lifts and does a double pump before he passes, that's unnecessary time he's wasting. He's allowing the back rower to come off the scrum and potentially tackle him. So we've got these kind of things looking, you're, as a skills coach, you're already probably looking on the pitch and identifying these kind of issues. Their technique's not right when they're jumping, their range of motion is really lacking when they're dropping down into a ruck, their accuracy of pass or the accuracy of their scrum technique is poor, or their line out throw, their speed is poor. You're probably already thinking these things. And all we really need to do is bring that same way of looking at movement and skills into the gym, because it's actually the same criteria. We're looking at the technique for any of our given lifts or movements. We're looking at range of motion, just like we would in our catch and pass or our line out lift. If someone's only lifting someone halfway up, it's a poor range of motion. I'm not getting to the peak of my jump because my lifter's not lifting me there. Same in the gym. We're compromising range of motion. Actually, that's not what I want. Just like the jumper getting to the peak of his lift, I want to work through a full range of motion. What about the accuracy of our sticking to that technical model, or the accuracy in our loading? What about the speed of movement? Just like we might want something fast in our on the pitch, we might want it fast in the gym. We might also want it slow. Maybe I want someone, just like they take the time to set up in their scrum, I want them to take the time to set up when they do their power clean. I don't want them to rush it. And just like that example of a scrum half doing a double pump on his pass and creating unwanted movement, well, we see the same thing. I don't want rugby players using their rib cage as a trampoline when they're bench pressing. That's unwanted movement. It's unnecessary. It's not useful. So actually, if we look through this skill lens or this skill paradigm, we're really talking about the same sort of things. It's movement. It all comes under this umbrella of human movement. Whether I've got a rugby ball in my hands or not, I can start to identify the same sort of things in the gym and on the pitch. Over to you, Sam.
So with that in mind, the aim now is to paint a picture as best we can of two opposing athletes and their journeys through their athletic development. So starting with Hamish, we're going to look at Hamish. He is following a classic get big, get strong rugby philosophy. He's in the gym and he believes that lifting is the key. The heavier the better means he's going to be more successful because he's going to be stronger. Typically, just looking at a sort of narrowed down focus in key lifts, normally just like a bench press, back squat, deadlift, and then a typical bodybuilding split across your week of focusing on legs, backs, buys, chest, shoulders, tries, upper body, lower body, etc. Now, there's no athletic development focus in there. Oh, 2 seconds. Sorry. It's very one-dimensional in terms of we're just lifting weights. We're going to get big. We're going to get strong. Then flip that to Angus. As you can see, we've picked very Scottish names. We're going with Angus being a more athletic focus. Here, from the get-go on day one, Angus is focusing on a multifaceted approach. So looking at these key fundamental movement patterns across pushing, pulling, rotating, jumping, being able to absorb force, produce force, and then accelerating and decelerating as well. So it's a much more holistic approach to actually being able to then perform in an athletic and performance environment. Then taking that on to how you then take that back to skills. What does that then mean in terms of their skill base? So Hamish then produces what we could probably all agree on is a very limited skill set. He's got limited variability in what he can do in the gym and therefore on the pitch. We've not really seen so far any sort of attempts of how do we jump, how do we land, how do we throw, catch, etc. In opposed to Angus, there's a much more variety there of a skill set already. So he's looking at a much more wide base of skills that will hopefully help transfer both from the gym and then onto the pitch. In terms of how that then looks on a little bit of a deeper level, Hamish then produces a little bit of an ego lifting kind of perspective. So it's about how can I be lifting heavier than the person next to me in the gym. Normally, when we go back to this skill lens that Rob has mentioned in terms of what you're actually looking for to analyse whether that's a rugby skill or whether it's a skill in the gym, you will absolutely say poor technique in somebody that just wants to lift and put on as much weight as we can on the bar or pick up the heaviest dumbbells on the rack. Short ranges of motion, not allowing yourself to create that adaptations across your whole muscular range. Limited skill variability. He is strong in the gym, as we were saying, but that does not mean that he's athletic. Going across to Angus, he might not be particularly strong in anything, and yeah, he might not be back squatting the same as what Hamish is back squatting, but actually he has a much wider toolbox to then take into his longer term progression. There's good range of motion. We're going to see depth in back squats. We're going to see him being able to jump, land, being able to roll, being able to absorb force, create force in a much more effective way. This gives him a good general physical preparedness for then going into the next part of his athletic development pathway and his journey. So then what happens next with these two players? So for the discussion, Hamish and Angus have both been selected into the Caledonia Academy, and this is where they would then come across myself in the gym. So we're going to then look at how this potentially hinders or helps their training, or how their training history helps or hinders them in the next step of the process. What does this mean for their new coaches? So what does that mean for the likes of myself in the gym or the rugby coaches on the pitch, depending on what their training history has been prior to their entrance into the academy. So if you go into Hamish, we're looking at Hamish. So normally what I would do, and this is kind of looking at this from a real life perspective, when somebody would come into the academy, especially at an under 16s level, everyone goes through a physical competency screening. So we need to assess how this athlete moves. We have no prior knowledge really of what training they've had, where, how often, how regular, and who that coach is. So we come in with an open eye and let's see how this athlete moves. Hamish goes through the same physical competency screening that Angus goes through. So how does he squat? How does he brace? How does he rotate? How does he jump, land, etc. Hamish, with his very limited toolbox, now means that I have to go back and retrain a lot of his already believed advanced skills, which obviously aren't as advanced as he originally thinks. So this takes time. Now, there's not always a lot of time within the academy. When you come in, especially at an under 16 level, you're not guaranteed to make through, guaranteed your spot within the next block of training past, say, Christmas or past, depending on whatever time you come into the academy. So actually, we're quite limited in what we can do with a player in terms of how do we best reflect his athletic potential. So actually, Hamish has already started off on a bit of a back foot, and it takes time for us to unpick those training principles that he believes are advanced and that he feels are better than, say, because he can lift 100 kilos in the back squat and his peer can only lift a bar, an empty bar. It's a bit of an unfair reflection on the athlete, and then you've got a little bit of an ego wrestle in terms of the athlete buy-in. You're now telling them they have to change the way that they believe is the right way to train and actually almost start them 4 or 5 steps back from where they currently are. If you look at Angus, Angus has already got that solid foundation that he's set in the gym and on the pitch prior to coming into the academy. He is much more set for the longer term picture of how he's going to then develop through the academy. In the academy, we have obviously our monthly athlete monitoring battery, where this will come up as a resource at the end of the presentation, but he will be more likely to meet our performance markers, and that is used very carefully in terms of where we see how we see our athletes should be progressing by the time that they meet the end of their time in the academy. There's a higher chance of success for Angus within the academy because he's already built that foundation that he can just keep building on. He doesn't need to backtrack. We could just actually, as much as we can, keep him developing along a good trajectory. And then you're looking into things like senior academies and semi-pro contracts as a reward at the end of that development process. And just as a little bit of a real life example, so this was taken in the gym actually last night. This is a tight head prop that we currently have. He's been in the academy since an under 16, and I think we can all agree, if we've all got a decent level of understanding of what a back squat should look like. Body weight is 118 kilos. His back squat right there, he's squatting 140 kilos. He has about predicted 1 rep max at the minute of 164. Now, the academy standard for a prop is 180, but we can definitely say that he's on the trajectory to meet that by the time he leaves the academy. And just looking at how that correlates onto the pitch, so if you're looking at power, so we test our athletes off 4 sticks quite regularly to see how they are adapting through their training cycles. Looking at his peak power, he's actually above the average standard there for his position, and his 10-meter time again is within the range that we would look at to be for his position at 1.181 seconds. So he's a well-rounded athlete, moves very well, and for somebody that you would look at as a prop at that body weight, you might argue or might have that sort of initial judgment that he's not going to be able to hit those shapes and positions. But from the correct training methods and principles instilled at the beginning of his journey through the academy, and then before that, he is actually now able, as an under 18, looking to secure hopefully a senior academy contract next year. He's put himself in a very good position athletically to transfer this on pitch, and he's actually one of our national under 18 age grade players. So there's some hopefully crossover, and you can see how this journey through good and bad training methods, shall we say, can actually apply into the real world. And we see some examples of this in our academy.
So the question then is, how do we build more like this theoretical character of Angus? And this is something that I think when I first started at Scottish Rugby, we weren't thinking about this at all. I remember it was all about bench, squat, deadlift, chin. It was all about these metrics and these targets. And I remember there was a flow chart. And specifically, it said, is the athlete strong enough? Yes or no. If they're strong enough, then focus on this. If they're not, then squat this many times a week, bench this many times a week, work on this. Are they powerful enough? No. Okay, then work on the Olympic lifts, work on plyometrics. But the problem was, if you went back to the beginning of that flow chart, there was this question, does the athlete move well? And it just went straight to the next category. And I realized there was no program for the answer no. What if the athlete doesn't move well? And it got me thinking and realizing that actually pretty much every training program out there on the internet or wherever you choose to pick up a training program has this base assumption that the person on the other end of that program already moves well. They already back squat well, or they already bench press well. And it made me realize there's a real lack of understanding in how to create programs for better movement, as opposed to just more strength or more power or more speed. There's a dime a dozen for those programs, but it's very rare that you find a program that is, how do we help build a toolbox of skills for a beginner in the very early days of their gym journey? And that's what got me really passionate about working with youth athletes at this stage, to help them build a toolbox, a range of skills, to focus on developing the athletic skills that set them up for success. And I think one of the things I've learned over the years, and then leaving Scottish Rugby and coming into the private sector, working exclusively with athletes between 10 to 18, many of whom have gone on to the Edinburgh Academy and onto the Institute of Sport and professional football clubs, is this is the area that I've really started to specialize in. And I think the philosophy here is really key, and how we program this is really key, because it's very easy to, and people will want to talk about this all the time. Every time, strength coaches are talking about sets and reps and velocity-based training and potentiation and, this new method and that new method. But very rarely are people talking about complexity as a tool for programming. Talking about how we start with something very basic to a newbie in the gym and gradually release more complexity into their program to teach them movements. So actually what I think we need to do to build more athletes like Angus is to shift this focus away these stages from more weight on the bar or more power output to developing this wide range of athletic skills, just like we would on the pitch. As a rugby coach, if I focused only on a player's 5-meter pass off their left-hand side, and they got really amazing at that, but they are awful off their right-hand side, they can't pass more than 5 meters, the next coach that inherits that player is not going to thank me for the work that I've done. Even though I might say, yeah, but look at how good he is in that 5-meter pass off his left-hand side. I'm going to say, yeah, but he's totally one-dimensional. He's got nothing else to his game. And that's where I think we need to focus on this toolbox. And I would encourage you to start looking at complexity and variety rather than intensity at that early stage. And really, all we're asking coaches to do is to do what you're already good at. Coach skills. We're already good at coaching skills on the rugby pitch. We're already good at figuring out how to challenge players by varying the distance or getting them to think about changing their technique or interrupting their pattern of thinking to make them execute slightly differently. We just need to take that same mentality and bring it into the gym. And this doesn't need to be specifically in a gym setting. This can be done on a pitch. And often one of the things that we hear from coaches is, I don't have time. I don't have time to do this. And actually, this shouldn't take any extra time. We can totally dose this in very simple ways. It can be in the warm-up, 10 to 15 minutes that we're probably already doing anyway, just a bit more structure. It could be in a flip-flop with, a 5-minute skills block, a 5-minute athletic development block. It could be in a rotation if you have multiple coaches. Maybe you have a catch and pass station, a tackle station, an athletic development station. And maybe actually you're in the luxury and you have that extra hour a week and you decide to do a standalone session. That's an option. But all those things are going to help, whether it's a warm-up or it's a standalone session, to get that dose of athletic development in and enhance athletic movement skills. So what does that look like? So we talked a bit about, okay, a classic gym list, but we want to create well-rounded athletes. We want athletes who can create solutions to the problems that happen in front of them. And that isn't just our classic barbell lifts. That's not going to be enough. We're not training powerlifters. We're training athletes who are in a dynamic, chaotic environment. And they need to be able to get in and out of positions that are very unlike a bench press. So that's our basic sort of crawling shapes. And here you can see an elephant crawl, a crab crawl, a bear crawl, simple crawls that we can stick into our warm-ups or even our mobility components before a gym session. Really good bang for our buck, shoulder stability, core strength, mobility activities. There's a great series here that we filmed during COVID. It's part of the Vitality Fit for Rugby series, and we've got loads of drills on here about rolling, forwards roll, over the shoulders, backwards. I remember once working with an under-20s prop in the borders, and he couldn't do a forward roll. And I thought, how on earth are you going to get out of trouble in some of the positions that you have to hit? Like, we know rolling away is a key component of the tackle. We're not very good at rolling in different directions. We're going to have issues. So this should be a key component of any rugby players program, in my opinion. And again, this can be something we dose into a warm-up. This is a direct copy and paste from one of the movement curriculums that we have here at the Athlete Academy. And essentially what you're looking at here is exactly what I discussed around using variability and complexity as our key variable in our program. So right now, as I speak, there's athletes going through this in the gym across the hallway. And essentially, this theoretically could be 12 months of training. So we would spend a month at each level. We individualize this a bit depending on the athlete's competency. So you might start at level 1, you might start at 4, 5, 6, wherever it is. But essentially, you work across a level, much like we've color-coded this like martial arts belts, and you're working on that particular variation over the month. In our compound lifts, we'll start with 3 sets of 6 reps. You might say, that's really not a lot of reps. And that's entirely on purpose. Because when we're learning, fatigue is the enemy. If I started with 3 sets of 15, we might get 5 good reps, 5 where we're starting to fatigue a little bit, and it's starting to look not quite what we want. And then the last 5 where we're like, actually, those weren't what we wanted at all. Well, let's not even go there. Let's just say we're going to start with 6, and it's got to be 6 of your best. And then next week, we're going to give you a couple more reps practice, so we're going to do 3 sets of 8. And we do this 6, 8, 10, 12 at the end of the month. We cut it back to 3 sets of 6 reps, and we change the variation. So what I'm really doing here is not teaching someone an exercise, like how to back squat. I'm teaching them the movement pattern of squatting, because I'm not going to be their S&C coach forever. They might graduate me and go into Caledonia. They might graduate me and go into Jared here at Edinburgh, which has happened. And I don't know necessarily what he's going to want. Maybe he really loves front squatting. Maybe he wants them to overhead squat. If we've just loaded up on back squat and they've got a 200 kilo back squat, I might make myself look really good on Instagram, but he's totally unprepared for that next environment where he's been asked to front squat, and we've never done that. So it's not my job to get them that strong. It's my job to fill their toolbox and prepare them for the next coach who might choose which of those tools they want to emphasize more. So here we're focusing more on these, collecting these skills and understanding movement so that they can walk into any program and Sam can say, have you ever done a snatch grip RDL? Yeah, cool, sweet. Let's crack on and train. She doesn't have to spend a month coaching them to do that because I should have done it and didn't do it. So this is how we look at changing that complexity. And I am going to give you access to this. This is an interactive PDF, so you can click on any of these exercises, and a YouTube video of a very handsome looking model will pop up. Maybe not. But you'll get a demonstration of what these exercises are. And it will start to make you think about some different variations, some out-of-the-box ideas of how to keep challenging movement. And this is where we're coming back to those tools. So as a skills coach, you're probably already using some of these tools, but these are something to think about. When we're talking about encouraging technique and encouraging movement, obviously, the heavier and heavier we go, the more we're going to compromise that. Now, that's not to say that in the future, when we're competent, we're not going to get strong. We absolutely are. But in this phase, while we're learning, that's not the objective. The objective is to cement good quality movement patterns. So here are some of the tools at our disposal to create that or to challenge athletes in that. So we can increase the range of motion. So a great example, level 1 of that curriculum you just saw is a bodyweight squat to a bench. I've restricted the range of motion. I've made it easier because we're doing half as much range of motion. However, I can challenge that by having that athlete do a full ass to grass squat all the way down. That would be a progression. Again, tempo is a real great one. Let's say, yeah, we're quite competent at 1 second up, 1 second down. What if we change that? What if we go 5 seconds on the way down? Now you have to show me you've got really great eccentric strength. You can hold these shapes. You've got good quality control. We can add in an isometric hold at the bottom or top of a movement. So at the top of my chin up, for example, could hold it for 2 seconds. The bottom of my squat, could hold it for 2 seconds. That's going to challenge in a different way. That's not just adding more load on. We could look at doing a bilateral to unilateral variation. So maybe we go, instead of doing a 2-legged RDL, we're going to start doing a single-leg barbell RDL. Now, the load's not going to be anywhere the same, but I have to fight to hit those same shapes and to hold my technique because my stability has been challenged. We could look at something asymmetrical. So maybe, you know, a classic dumbbell lunge, but now I'm going to hold the dumbbell in one hand. And that's going to challenge my trunk stability. I'm going to have to fight to maintain the same shape when I am asymmetrically loaded. And then we can look at some complexity. So how do we start to link some of these things together? And we get some contextual interference, which is a great tool for teaching skills. Essentially means instead of doing 3 bouts of the same thing, let's say it's push-ups, we might do push-ups and we might add in some sort of reverse lunge. I'm going to start to link these together. So maybe we're going to do 10 push-ups, 10 reverse lunges. Now, when I come back to the push-ups, I have to kind of get back into push-up mode. Think, okay, where are my elbows? What am I doing? Am I bracing my trunk? So we're causing a pattern interrupt that causes me to focus more heavily next time I come around. We could look at leverage. Leverage is a tool we don't talk about anywhere enough in training. It's something that one of the most useful coaching experiences I ever had was in inner city London, at a basketball court at London Thunder Basketball Club, where I had 30 youth athletes and not a single weight. And I had to think, how am I going to keep challenging these kids in 6 months' time? And leverage and tempo became my best friend, because I thought, how can we make this more challenging? Well, we change the leverage. So, for example, going from a push-up on the ground to a decline push-up, where we raise the legs. Another one is direction. So we can challenge it through the different direction. We know that we are very stable in a forwards and backwards plane, slightly less stable in a side-to-side plane, and even less stable in a rotational plane. So maybe I'm going to challenge you to plyometrics by saying, yeah, this month we're going to jump forwards, but next month we're going to jump sideways, or we're going to rotate, or we're going to start to put these together. Maybe we'll go forward and sideways and rotate. We're not just adding more intensity, we're challenging in a different way by thinking outside the box. So these are all tools that you can use as a coach immediately on the pitch, in the gym, to start challenging athletes in a way that's not just adding more intensity to the movement.
Perfect. So with everything we have mentioned, we really think it's important to have that few key take-home messages. So there's a lot of information there, but the key messages we want you to think about is that looking through that lens of your skills. So all movements are skills, whether it's rugby technique, whether it's your stuff in the gym. Coach to build movement skills, don't coach to just get them big and strong. It is imperative that they start out their journey in the best place that they can, that gives them that longer term chance of success. And like Rob said, if they're progressing from his academy into one of our academies, they're equipped to make sure that they can handle that transition and that they have that skill set and that toolbox to progress all the way through their pathway. You don't need more time, you don't need kit. It can be kept really simple. So you can do it on the pitch at the end of the warm-up. You can do it without any kit. You can do it just with the bodies of the players in front of you. And plan for that long-term success. Like I've said, don't think about how we get them, a 14-year-old to squat on a bar with 100 kilos. Let's think about how we get them in all varieties of skills to allow them to become the most successful athlete that they can be. And hopefully these resources that we can take away, so there's a lot of information there, but you're probably thinking, well, how do I now go and obviously implement that within my own environment? There's probably, everyone here has got a different setup, different access to different kit, resources, staff, and different players in front of them. So hopefully from start to finish, from top to bottom here, it allows you to kind of use these through a little bit of a journey. So starting from the Fit for Rugby videos in terms of, and your A to Z of animal shapes, looking at Rob's Athlete Academy curriculum. These will get your this will get your journey started for your athletes, and then going into the athlete monitoring battery and academy performance standards that I use within the academy. Once we're at that stage, looking at under 17s, under 18 athletes, how we then monitor them at that more advanced stage of training. So hopefully you can get access to these. I think these will go out to yourselves in a follow-up email. And then if you do have any other want to get in touch with us, Rob, these are your...
Yes,
sorry, we're going to start taking
that's right. We're going to make those resources available. I think it's really important. One of the things that really grinds my gears is going to a conference or a workshop or a CPD event and thinking, that was really cool. What do I do with that information? So we want to make it practical. We want to give you tools so that your session, whenever you do it, tomorrow night, Monday night, you can start using these things straight away. So a lot of those are YouTube links. A lot of them are interactive. You can take what you think is going to work best in your environment. But if you do want to see some more ideas, or you want to see the kind of work that we do with these younger age groups of athletes, you can check out the Athlete Academy. That's it there on Instagram, just _ the Athlete Academy. You can head to theathleteacademy.uk. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me, rob@athleticevolution.co.uk. I'm more than happy to talk until the cows come home about this topic in particular.
Yeah. What my Instagram handle there for Next Level Perform, and then my email there just through my Scottish Rugby email address if there's anything that you want to ask in terms of what we do with the guys in the academy. More than happy to chat and help out at any level, whether they're not in the academy, they're starting out in the obviously more Rob's age group, or whether they come into us. Yeah, more than happy to have a chat.
Perfect.